You dreamed last night, and the strange part is that your brain forgot it on purpose. You have no memory of it. You will dream again tonight, and by breakfast the whole of it will be gone. This is your memory doing exactly what the design intended. Maybe you are the one who says you stopped dreaming years ago. Maybe you catch a stray fragment now and then and lose it by the time your feet hit the floor. Maybe you wake with nothing at all, night after night, and have decided your mind simply goes dark. Every one of those is the same machinery, seen from a slightly different seat. There is a molecule your brain uses to stamp an experience into the kind of memory you can call back later. During the phase of sleep when your dreams are richest, your brain switches that molecule almost entirely off. The chemical that leans over to the deep memory structures and says, "Hold on to this one," is withdrawn precisely when the most elaborate thing your mind builds all day is playing across the cortex. They were never meant to be kept. So the question is why? Why would a brain run the most involved internal production of the entire day and then chemically guarantee you will not remember a frame of it? The answer begins with what that phase of sleep actually looks like on the inside, because the same chemistry explains two things at once. It explains why the dream feels so real while it is happening, and it explains why it becomes impossible to hold the moment you wake. Your sleep is not one flat state. It moves in cycles, roughly one every 90 minutes, and each cycle carries you through very different country. The early cycles are dominated by the deepest, slowest sleep, a state with its own separate job. That deep sleep is when your brain files away the facts of your day, the names and the numbers and the where you left your keys, replaying them out of one structure and copying them into long storage. It is also when the brain runs its cleaning cycle, opening the channels between the cells and flushing out the waste that a day of hard thinking leaves behind. That is one kind of night's work, and it is not the kind we are here for, because as the night goes on, a very different phase begins to stretch longer and longer. Your eyes start to flick back and forth beneath the closed lids. Your brain lights up almost as brightly as it does when you are awake. This is the phase where the dreaming lives, and it is not spread evenly through the night. It saves its longest, richest stretch for the last hours before you rise, which is one reason the dream you have any chance of catching is usually the one you were having just before the alarm. Now, three things happen to your brain chemistry in that dreaming phase, all at the same time, and each one carries part of the answer. The first is that the alertness signal collapses. Deep in the brainstem sits a small, dense cluster of cells whose job all day is to spray the whole brain with a chemical of vigilance. It is the signal that says, "Stay sharp, mark this is worth keeping." In the dreaming phase, that cluster goes almost completely silent. The chemical falls to nearly nothing. The name for that alertness signal is norepinephrine, and its absence is the single reason your dreams evaporate. Your cortex is fully switched on, painting an entire world in front of you, but the stamp that records has been quietly pulled out of the machine, and this is not a guess. The levels of these chemicals have been sampled directly from the sleeping brain, drop by drop, and read off against the stages of sleep, and the imaging that watches which regions burn fuel through the night shows that identical story from the outside. The chemistry of the dreaming phase is measured, not imagined. The second shift takes away a different kind of control. Another source down in the brainstem, one that during the day helps hold your mood steady and helps decide which thoughts deserve your notice and which get waved away, also falls quiet. That one is serotonin. When it withdraws, the filters that normally keep the odd and the irrelevant out of your conscious mind simply come down. Nothing is being screened at the door anymore. Anything at all can walk onto the stage and belong there. Third comes the shift that turns the lights on and floods the room. A chemical that drives rich, detailed sensory experience surges upward. And here is the strange part. It fires at rates even higher than when you are awake. This one is acetylcholine, and it is the reason a dream has pictures and sound and texture and motion, instead of being a dim and wordless nothing. Your visual cortex is running hard, generating a whole world with no eyes open to feed it. Your motor cortex is issuing commands to move, to run, to reach, though something intercepts those commands before they ever arrive at your muscles, which is exactly why you can sprint and fall and fly all night and never so much as twitch. The body is actively paralyzed in this phase, held down by a switch in the brainstem that clamps the muscles still for the exact duration of the dream and releases them the instant it ends. The dream needs a body that cannot act on it, And when that clamp fails, which does happen to some people as they age, the body starts to obey the dream after all. They kick, they shout, they reach out and strike at things that are not in the room, living out the motions of a dream their sleeping mind believes is real. It is a rare and telling glimpse of what the paralysis is holding back every single night in everyone else. And a small almond of tissue buried deep in the brain, the part that handles raw emotion, is blazing away, pouring fear and longing and grief and joy into the dream at an intensity that matches your waking life and often overruns it. Held down, the body cannot move while the mind runs free. Hold those facts together in one hand. Your cortex is awake. Your emotions are turned all the way up. The part that records has been switched off. And, as you are about to see, the part that reasons has been deliberately unplugged as well. Think of it as a recording studio running at full power. The musicians are all there and the room is loud and alive, every instrument going at once. But someone has walked quietly over to the mixing desk and switched off the tape. The performance is real. The performance is genuinely happening. It simply is not being saved, because in this studio it was never built to be saved. The playing and the recording were never one job. One is the whole purpose of the night. The other was left switched off. So what got unplugged? Just behind your forehead sits the part of your brain that reasons. It is the region that checks whether what you are living through actually makes sense. It keeps track of time, of order, of cause following cause, of who you are and what is and is not possible in the world. It is the calm circuit that can reach down and talk your alarm system back off the ledge, and it is the very first thing to buckle when rest runs short. During the dreaming phase, though, it has been switched off deliberately, dimmed by the very same withdrawal of those steadying brainstem chemicals that pulled the recording stamp. And here is the thing that quietly changes how you understand every strange dream you have ever had. This is why a dream has no logic. This is why you can be standing in your childhood kitchen that has somehow also become an airport, holding an ordinary conversation with someone who has been dead for years, and feel not the faintest flicker of doubt that any of it is wrong. The one circuit whose entire job is to raise a hand and say, "Wait, hold on, this cannot be right," has gone dark for the night. There is nobody left in the room to object. You accept the impossible so completely because the part of you that measures what is possible has clocked out and gone home. But if that reasoning region is simply switched off in the dreaming phase, what happens on the rare night it flickers back on while the dream is still running? That is not a thought experiment. It happens to some people, and it is one of the most revealing things in all of sleep science. In the middle of an ordinary dream, a person suddenly realizes they are dreaming. The world stays dream-shaped around them, the impossible scenery holds, but awareness snaps back on, and some of them can even begin to steer what happens next. A reasoning region flickering back to life inside a running dream is exactly what the brain scans reveal, and a team led by Voss documented it directly. What they recorded was precisely what you would now predict. The region behind the forehead, the one that should be dark, flickers partway back to life right there in the middle of the dreaming phase. The self walks back onto a stage it had already left. It is a partial return, not a full waking, a single region coming back up while the rest of the dreaming machinery keeps running around it. In a plain dream, that region is simply not active, and that single absence is the whole difference between merely watching a dream and knowing from the inside that you are having one. Now you can see the full shape of what your brain does with you every night. It builds an entire world. It fills that world with real feeling. It removes the judge. It removes the recorder, which leaves a question the chemistry alone cannot answer, and it is the deep one. Why build all of this, at such cost, only to erase it? Look again at the exact combination the chemistry has set up. The reasoning region is offline. The emotion is running at full strength. And the alertness chemical, the one that in waking life makes an intense moment feel sharp and stressful and urgent in the body, is missing from the room. That precise arrangement may turn out to be the entire point of the exercise. Deep in this dreaming phase, the brain may be replaying the emotional experiences of your recent life. That is the hypothesis a pair of sleep scientists, van der Helm and Walker, put forward, and it reframes the whole enterprise from top to bottom. The events come back. The feelings that rode along with them come back too, but the alertness chemical that flooded your body when those events first happened is not there this second time. the content plays again. The stress chemistry has been cleanly stripped out of it. And that distinction is not a small one. The alertness chemical is not just a memory stamp. In waking life, it is also the chemistry of the racing heart, the tight chest, the body braced for threat. Replay the frightening memory with that chemistry running, and you would relive the fear in full. Replay it with that chemistry switched off, and you get the picture of the event without the physical grip of it. Waking life almost never offers that separation. Feel the memory, and you feel the body's response to it welded together. This dreaming phase may be the only place the two are ever pulled apart. Sit with what that would actually mean for you. Something difficult happened yesterday. A hard conversation. A fright. A small loss. In the moment it happened, your body was washed in the chemistry of alarm, and that chemistry is part of what welded the memory into place, and part of what makes it hurt to touch. Now, in the safety of the dreaming phase, your brain runs that same emotional material through again and again across the hours of the night, except this time there is no alarm chemistry attached to it. The memory is being replayed inside a room where the stress signal has been switched off at the source. That, the proposal goes, is precisely how the sting comes out. Night after night, the brain rehearses the emotional charge of a memory in the deliberate absence of the chemistry that made it sharp, and gradually, over many passes, the charge itself comes down. You wake with the memory perfectly intact. Nothing about the fact of it is lost. What has changed, slowly, is how much it stings to hold. The old line, "that time heals," may really be describing something far more mechanical and far more specific than we ever meant by it. It may be that sleep, across many nights of this stripped-down replay, is quietly unhooking the alarm from the memory, one night at a time. There is a clean division of labor hiding underneath all of this, once you line the two kinds of sleep up beside each other. The deep, slow sleep earlier in the night replays the facts through the memory structure that files events, copying the what and the where into long storage. The dreaming phase does something different in kind. It works the emotional weight of experience through that deep almond of feeling instead, and it does that work with the alarm chemical switched off. Two different phases of the night working through two different structures on two entirely different jobs. One files away what happened to you. The other decides how much it is still allowed to hurt. You keep the fact of the argument, the shape of the loss, the sequence of the bad afternoon. What gets worked loose, slowly, is the grip it has on your chest when the memory surfaces. The record stays. The wound closes. Well, a careful word here, because this genuinely matters and you deserve the honest version of it. Each separate link in that chain has been measured and holds up on its own. The alertness chemical really does vanish in this phase. The emotional structures really do fire. The replay really does appear to happen. Whether the complete story runs exactly the way it has just been laid out is still being worked out in laboratories today. Every measurement gathered so far points the one way, but the full assembled picture is the leading idea, not a closed case, and it would be dishonest to hand it to you as settled fact when the people who study it for a living are still testing the last joints of it. If that idea does hold, though, it quietly changes what we make of a very ordinary experience that a great many people describe. Because if the dreaming phase is where your emotions are processed, then the person who tells you they simply stopped dreaming somewhere in their 50s has not actually stopped at all. Something quieter than that has taken place. The dreaming changed, the remembering changed, and the amount of this processing the brain manages to get done in a night changed right alongside them. To see how, you have to pull apart two things that feel like one thing but are not. With age, dreaming quietly changes shape. Total time in this dreaming phase falls as you get older. Part of that is simply that you sleep fewer hours overall than you once did. Part of it is that these dreaming hours claim a smaller slice of each night than they used to. The figures usually quoted, a fall from roughly a quarter of your sleep down towards something like a sixth or a fifth of it, are approximate numbers rather than precise ones, but the direction they point is solid and well measured. Less of this stretch across the whole night means fewer dream episodes running through it. That much is straightforward, and it compounds with something about where the phase sits. Because the dreaming phase loads into the last third of the night, it overlaps exactly with the hours a lighter, older sleeper is most likely to surface. The richest dreaming and the thinnest, most broken sleep arrive in one stretch before dawn, which is why, for many people past 60, the only dream they ever catch is the one running as the morning light comes up. But dreaming and remembering a dream are two entirely separate events, and the gap between them is where the real surprise has been hiding all along. To carry a dream up into the morning with you, one very particular thing has to happen, and it is narrower than you would ever guess. You have to wake up during the dream itself, or in the few seconds right after it ends, while the whole thing is still hanging in the air around you. In that brief surfacing, that little breach of the surface, the alertness chemical creeps partway back into the brain, and just for a moment, it is present enough to stamp a fragment before you slide back under. That is the only window there is, and it closes fast. Stay asleep, and the fragment never gets stamped. Surface a few minutes later, once the dream has already dissolved back into deeper sleep, and there is nothing left to catch. The dream has to be caught in the act or not at all. So the person who swears they dream vividly every single night is really telling you something quite specific about the shape of their sleep. They are waking, briefly, inside the dreaming phase, over and over through the night. And the person who says flatly that they never dream at all is almost certainly sleeping straight through that same phase, undisturbed, from one bank to the other without ever once breaking the surface. Which means the person who felt their dreams quietly fade sometime in their 50s actually lived through two separate changes at once, stacked one on top of the other. There was less of the dreaming phase being produced in the first place, and there were fewer of those tiny awakenings happening to land on top of the dreams that did still run. Both changes pulled in the very same direction, so here is the part worth holding on to. Your dreams continued every night. The doorway you would have needed in order to remember them simply narrowed. This quietly builds toward a paradox, one that takes a common complaint and turns it completely upside down. So what is a remembered dream actually evidence of? Every single dream you carry into the morning cost you an awakening to get it there. Each remembered dream is, in effect, the fingerprint of a moment when your sleep broke the surface and let a little waking air in. So the more dreams you find yourself able to recall, the more times your dreaming phase was actually interrupted through the night. And more interruptions mean less of the long, unbroken, uninterrupted stretch that the emotional processing may well depend on to do its work at all. And then, follow that thread all the way out to where it leads, because it goes somewhere genuinely strange. The person waking every single morning with a head full of vivid, detailed dreams may in fact be getting less of the nightly recalibration the brain performs, not more of it. And the person who wakes with nothing, who cannot summon back a single image, no matter how hard they reach for one, may have slept clean through the entire cycle and let it run all the way to the end of its work. The forgetting on this reading is the very evidence that the process ran from one end to the other, uninterrupted, exactly the way it was built to run. Whoever remembers nothing did the whole night's work. The one who remembers everything kept getting pulled off the table before it was finished. A hard edge to this is worth naming. A night broken into many small pieces is not equal to a night slept whole, even if the total hours match. The long, unbroken run is where the deep work seems to get done, and a dream-filled, surfacing, restless night trades that long run for a scrapbook of remembered fragments. You wake with more to tell and less that got finished. This holds as a general relationship and not as an iron law, and it is worth being clear about that too. Some people do carry a naturally higher level of dream recall without their sleep being broken in any harmful way at all. The tendency toward more arousals and more recall is a real and measured thing. It is not by itself a sign of anything wrong, but the direction of the relationship is worth sitting inside for a moment because it flatly reverses the intuition most of us walk around with. The vivid dreamer has nothing to envy. The blank sleeper may quietly be the one whose brain got the most done in the dark. Which leaves one last question, and it is the one that reaches directly into daily life for anyone who has crossed into the second half of it. What does it cost you, over decades, to slowly lose this phase? If this dreaming phase really is the workshop where emotion gets processed, then losing it, slowly and quietly, year over year, means losing some measure of that processing capacity right along with it. By the middle of the 60s, a person is running on something like 2/3 to 4/5 of the dreaming time they had back in their 20s. Every emotional experience they meet now gets fewer passes through that nightly workshop, fewer chances to have its alarm chemistry unhooked and its charge set gently down. And that may connect to something a great many people feel with age, and very rarely put a name to. An emotion system runs hotter when rest runs short, the alarm structures growing more reactive, the brakes on them growing weaker. The slow loss of this dreaming phase across a whole lifetime may produce a gentler, chronic, drawn-out version of that very same imbalance. Emotional material builds up with a little less of the nightly processing that used to file its edges down. So the sense that things simply land harder as the years accumulate, that feelings seem to sit closer to the surface than they once comfortably did, may be partly this, working quietly alongside the shifting hormonal thresholds of age. It is one contributor among several, not the whole of the story. But it is a real one, and a deeply quiet one, running every night whether you catch it or not. A wider pattern sits behind this too, one you have met before under other names. A body past its middle years is a body running many of its nightly repair systems on less time and less fuel than it once had, the cellular energy work included. The shrinking of this dreaming phase belongs to that same family. It is one more restorative process being handed a shorter window with every passing decade, quietly doing a little less of its work each year while you sleep on, unaware that anything has been rationed at all. There is one last place these same circuits turn up, and it is the strangest of all. The little brainstem machinery that generates this dreaming phase, that floods the cortex and paints the vivid world across it, appears to fire again at the very end of life, in the final minutes of a dying brain, throwing up dreamlike activity when almost everything else has already gone quiet. That same deep circuitry, firing again, that same kind of internal storm, the system that ran the theater every night of your life may run it one final time on the way out the door. So consider, one last time, everything that happened inside you while you simply slept. You dreamed last night. You will dream again tonight. The world your brain built was vivid and emotional, and it told itself a long and elaborate story from the inside. It built the whole of that while the reasoning behind your forehead was switched off, while the emotion ran at full strength, and while a chemical drove your sleeping cortex louder than parts of your waking day ever reach. And in the very same breath, your brain withdrew the single molecule that would have let you keep even a fragment of it. That alertness chemical fell to almost nothing, right at the moment the grandest thing your mind makes all day was playing across it. The dreams were processed without the recording stamp because the processing itself may quietly require the stress chemistry to be absent from the room. Your brain replayed the emotional weight of your whole life inside a space where the alarm had been switched off at the wall. Whether that replay is the thing that slowly lifts the weight is the leading idea, and the direction that every measurement so far has pointed. The forgetting was the design. The erasure was the architecture. You slept through the entire cycle, and the process ran to completion. The dreams did their work, and your brain made certain you would never know.